This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 104th edition of Sports Untold on Rainier Avenue Radio. My special guest today is my Rainier Avenue friend and colleague, Renault Bean, also known as Pep. Renault is a co-host of the great Lidline Sports podcast, also on Rainier Avenue Radio with Granville Emerson and Otis Stevenson. Lidline's a very informative and engaging sports talk show that I recommend people listen to. Renault, you're a veteran. I know you served in the U.S. Navy. I want to wish you a happy Veterans Day, and we all appreciate your service.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. My podcast is also now on YouTube, on Amazon, on Spotify, and other networks. People are welcome to go to sportsuntoldpodcast.com. You can also catch some of my interviews at my law firm website, plslawoffices.com. Well, Pep, I appreciate you coming on Sports Untold on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, I always enjoy seeing you, and it's fun to do a chat. How'd you get the nickname Pep?
Wow, that's a good question. Believe it or not, when before I was born, they said I kicked my mother a lot in the belly, and one of their friends said, he's a peppy little fella, and that's how I got it.
I did not know that. It's been around since you were even before you were
Yeah.
born. That's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. Well,
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering. I've known you for about 4 years now, but I didn't know the origins of your nickname.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Renault, some news just broke. I know you're a big football fan. That Ornell Beckman Jr. has signed with the Los Angeles Rams. Do you have any thoughts on that you can share?
Yeah, actually, I to believe it or not, I actually expected that because Deshaun Jackson last week wanted out of LA, and I figured, when we heard that the issues with OBJ and Cleveland, Baker Mayfield, and all that rigmarole was going on, and then they decided that he was gonna not be with the team anymore, and then of course they made a deal to leave the Browns. The first team that I thought of was the Rams was probably going to be the ones to get him,
Do
and
you
here we
see
are.
do you see this signing, Renault, affecting the Seahawks' playoff chances, anyways?
Not this particular signing. I don't think so. I mean, I think things are gonna play out the way they are, regardless of whether OBJ's in LA or not. Um, you know, LA's they're still gonna be good regardless. No matter what we saw Sunday night. Every team has a little downtime or a little attrition. Uh, we can speak on the Dallas Cowboys as well. Last Sunday, and a lot of teams, Buffalo. A lot of last Sunday was pretty crazy as far as a lot of upset. So the Rams are probably going to be just fine. Right now, the Cardinals are the number one team in the NFC West, so we can't forget them for
Yeah,
sure.
Arizona's playing pretty darn well for sure. Well, I'm going to fast track. I was going to get in the Hawks a little later, but since we're talking about Beckman, I'll make a little adjustment here. So Hawks are three and
Sure.
five. They play Green Bay this week, and
Yes.
it seems like they're clustered with a lot of other teams with like 4-4 and 3-5 kind of records.
Yes.
Can you see the Hawks sneaking in, going maybe 9-8, 8-9 this year? Do you have any optimism they can sneak in the wild card?
They can, but because they got some teams that they can beat. Upcoming. They're going to play Detroit. They're going to play Chicago. They're going to play Texas, or excuse me, the Texans. So these are teams that they surely have an opportunity to beat. And of course, when you're within your own division, uh, those things can play out, one way or the other. They've already beaten San Francisco. They have yet to play Arizona, but those Seahawks and Arizona games. It doesn't matter where they are, whether they're in Arizona or in Seattle. They're always tough battles. So yes, they can sneak in. And if you've noticed, Paul, the last 3 weeks, their defense has actually gotten a little bit better. They've actually cut down the yardage by over about 150 yards as far as what they were giving up from the start of the season. So yes, they can, but it's got to start to Sunday. I mean, yes, Green Bay will be favored, and of course, they haven't beaten Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay ever. They haven't won in Green Bay since 1999. But if they're going to do it, they're going to have to do it now.
Yeah, let's face this, Ronald. Tell me if you agree with this statement. This is just
Hmm.
not the greatest Seahawks team this last 10, 15 years. I don't know. I'm probably throwing out some too many packaging a lot of years in there, but it's just not a top Seahawks team. Would you agree with that?
It isn't, and it's especially on defense. It's pretty disappointing. The offense, if you look at the names on paper, they should be much better than what they've shown. But unfortunately, they can't stay healthy as far as the running back is concerned, Chris Carson, and of course, they were so high on the rookie D. Eskridge early, in the preseason and during training camp. I've heard nothing but glowing things about him. Yet he plays one game, gets knocked on his behind, and he gets a concussion and he's out for the 8 games. So that really didn't help. And of course, we all know that Russell got hurt as well, and that put a little uh, fly in the ointment. So it's gonna be tough because now they got to try and get everything all together again. Russ is coming back, Chris Carson's coming back, D. Eskridge is supposedly coming back all at the same time, but yet they haven't been able to gel yet. So this is going to be a real problem. Sunday, it's going to be interesting to see if they can get it together. I mean, Gino did good work 2 weeks ago when, he was throwing the ball to Metcalf and Tyler Lockett finally because they got to get their target. They've got to be targeted. They got to get their catches, but the run game also has to help them too. So if
They
Chris,
don't have a big margin of error right now, do they? Being
they
three and
don't.
five, yeah, with the
It's
season almost halfway over.
it's
Yep, yep.
very slim. It's
Very
credit card slim. Yeah.
Seriously, all this credit cards. Renault, I want to ask you about your background. I know you been a host with Granville and Otis Stevenson at Lidline Sports. Kind of tell us about how you became such a hardcore sports buff and kind of how you broke into
Sure.
your podcast broadcast gig. Tell us about your background a little bit.
Sure. Growing up in Seattle, on Beacon Hill, we played a lot of sports. Probably much more so on the street than kids do today, because we didn't have computers and internet and all that. So when you do that, you kind of get interested in seeing the pro players on TV. By the time I was 8, 9 years old, I really started getting into uh, Major League Baseball in '69. It's the first year that I remember actually really getting into it and following it and figuring out who's who. Um, but the Sonics, when they came in '67, '66, '67, I was already a fan. I was 6, you know, and my dad used to take me to the game. So I was already hooked on the NBA. We didn't have an NFL team, but I started watching the NFL highlight show with Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall every Sunday. Oh man, I did not miss that. If I did, I was very upset. So that's basically how I really got hardcore into following sports and I used to play this. I know this sounds silly, but I used to be in the backyard and I would play 9 inning games by myself using a little bat and some Reynolds wrap I'd rolled up, and I would play Detroit Tigers versus Boston Red Sox, and I would memorize batting lineup on both teams. I would look at the paper, read the lineup, memorize it, and go outside and play
I
it.
was similar as a kid too, Renault, doing make believe.
Yeah,
Sports talk. I remember, like in the late '70s, I'd pretend like I was Bob Blackburn talking about the Sonics, all that stuff. You mentioned
yeah,
'69. You remember the Pilots then?
yeah. Oh, Paul, I was definitely a Pilot's lover, because it was exciting to me. Because to me, well, of course, we had the Sonics, so that was our first, real professional team, in Seattle that was, you know, in the NBA. So when we got the Pilots, I was super stoked. And plus, I lived 5 minutes away from Six Stadium, Paul. So I could walk down there, ride my bike down there, and going to and I went to several games. And I got to tell you this story. My dad took me to a game one night, and it was the Seattle Pilots, and we played the Washington Senators. And the Senators were blowing the doors off the Pilots. It was like 11-3, in Yeah, it was 11-3 in the fifth inning, and my dad looked at his watch and said, "Man, Pep, come on, man, let's go." And I still wanted to stay, but I was like, "Oh, okay, we're getting killed." So the next morning, I wake up and I'm looking for the sports page, and my dad's like, "Oh, yeah, it's over there." And I was like, "Dad, where's the sports page?" And he's not helping me at all, right? He's kind of like giving me one slurred, mumbled answers. I said, "Dad, where's the sports page?" He said, "Man, it's over there. I don't know." And so I asked one more time, and he pulls it out from underneath him. Said, "I don't think you want to see this." And I open up the page, and the Pilots won 16-13.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And I looked at him, and he said, "Pep, I promise I'll never do that to you
Never
again."
leave her like that again. I think
No.
And by the way, I think Ted Williams was Ted Williams the Senators manager that year.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, he was.
yeah. That's a big baseball name he came to Seattle. Well, I share that with people. I was born in '70, but I share with people. When I drive by the Lowe's, Mount
Right.
Baker. There was once a pro franchise that played there, and the Sale Rainiers played there. There's a lot of history in that site. So.
Yep. And there's a plaque there on Rainier Avenue that says, home of the former Six Stadium.
Right.
So,
I think in the Lowe's store, there's actually, I think they have where home plate was. I think they have a little symbol. I don't know if they still have that. They did as of a few years ago. This is Paul Schneiderman, the 104th edition of Sports Untold on Rainier Avenue Radio with Renault Bean, also known as Pep. We're just going to hit a whole bunch of subjects today, Renault, and I want to get your take on this whole University of Washington football and basketball situation. On a wet Seattle day, it feels, it kind of represents the wetness outside that we're talking about.
You got to depress me even more.
Yeah, I know it. It's just that the weather is sort of symbolic of what's going on with those two major programs right now at Washington. So I want to ask you about a few questions of the Jimmy Lake situation. So, what's going on now with like college coaches? Is there no more margin of error? Are these coaches expected to perform like right away with amazing records and have no growing pains? Is Jimmy Lake in a way just encountering an era where those are the expectations?
Yeah. You know what? With what the internet and all these streams and all these different channels that you can watch, right? And all this exposure, kids see what's going on all over the country now. Whereas before, recruiting, you only recruit in your area, right? But now kids are you can be able to recruit kids from all over because of the exposure of Big Ten networks and Pac-12 networks that you can see from anywhere.
Right.
So these kids see where they, possibly might want to go, right? And then, of course, the expectations of these power conferences, like the Pac-12 and the SEC, which is number one, of course, and the Big Ten, Big 12, all these power conferences, winning, you have to win now. You can't wait. You can't wait on kids to develop 2 and 3 and 4 years, because as far as football, yes, most of them stay 4 years because, the NFL doesn't allow you to come into the league until you're a certain age or a certain amount of time. But in basketball, it's different because, hey, you might only get a guy for one season, the one and done, which hardly anyone likes nowadays. But that's the nature of the beast right now. You've got to win now. And as far as Washington is concerned, they were blindsided by the departure of Chris Peterson. Nobody saw that coming, right? I sure didn't. And so, they had to hire somebody quick, and, they wanted to get a guy that was already there. So they said, hey, this guy is a great defensive coach. He's, the kids bond with him. So, hey, Jimmy Lake, you're our guy. But this might be too big of a moment for him. He might not be ready to be a head coach of a Power 5 school. He might be better off somewhere, in some kind of middle of the road, Wyoming or something like that, New Mexico, a school like that. But he's at Washington, and Washington is in competition with LA as far as getting kids, and then Oregon with Nike. They recruit everywhere. I mean, this Anthony Brown is from New Jersey, right? So they got to compete with that, and that's tough.
A lot
That's
there, a
gonna,
lot there. I want to remind my audience on Facebook, please feel free to comment. If you have any questions for Renault today, please feel free to offer a few questions. We're having a good discussion. Paul Scheimer, Sports Untold, with Renault Laurent. A lot there. It just you would think maybe 15, 20 years ago there would be more of a 3-4 year plan that maybe Jimmy Lake would have been given, but it's a tough
right.
situation. You know, you and I follow each other on Facebook and we have some social media exchanges, and I don't know. I want to get your take on this. I understand the more I look at the video that maybe Coach Lake could have handled it a tad bit better, but in the context of trying to of the play and the penalty situation or possible penalty situation, I don't know. I thought it was a little overblown. Do you think it would have been fair if Jen Cohen and the UW made a public statement? Look, we spoke about Coach Lake about this. We're confident it won't happen again. Do people always have to be suspended when something goes wrong? I don't know. I'm a little
Yeah,
old
I
school. I don't
agree.
know. Give me your take on it.
Well, when I watched it, I was watching it, and what I had found out while I was watching it that he had been preaching about not getting into confrontations,
Right.
and things like that all week. And so this happens. So it's like when you have children, right? And you go to the store and you give them the preamble in the car. Look, don't touch anything. You're not getting anything. And then you go into the store and they start touching stuff. What do you do? You start snatching them.
Right. Right.
That's what he did to me is when he saw what was happening and what he had been preaching all week, he went over there and took care of that. Tried to get him away from it. Now I didn't see the slap on the helmet. I honestly didn't see that. I saw him the push, but I thought that was okay because I figured he was mad and didn't want a penalty, on
I thought
him
so too.
or his guy getting kicked out, right? So that's what I saw. So yes, I thought it was overblown when all the hullabaloo exploded. And yeah, I would like to have had Jen Cohen kind of stick up for her guy too, other than just say we're going to investigate and then all of a sudden, okay, well, we're going to suspend you. And to me, the suspension to me is almost like a neutral thing going because now are they suspending him for this week, not and trying to decide whether or not they want to keep him for the rest of the season. So this one game to me seems to be more of a neutral, figure out what we want to do type of deal. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen. But Granville has stated on the show, and I'm not speaking for him, but he has stated on the show that he doesn't see how Lake can survive this. And when you look at everything and all the factors, he's pretty close to spot on that. So it's going to be pretty hot deal to see whether he either remains or is getting released.
I don't know the inside situation, but it strikes me that Coach Lake is kind of in a purgatory kind of situation right now.
Right.
It just looks like it's a tough situation. Now, after reviewing the video, I don't claim to have all the answers on this, but I think where Coach Lake may have gone too far is once the player's back was turned when he gave him a jab. I think when the back was that may have been where Lake, if I were to find a mistake that Lake made. But that all said, I don't know about giving him a suspension over that. But that's my 2 cents. And I'm big on protecting student athletes. I think I point out to you online there's a little hypocrisy because a lot of these big schools are not always interested in protecting student athletes when it comes to long-term health care and things like that. The UW actually has a better program than some other schools. There's some contradictions to the whole situation too.
Yeah, and we talked about this on the show the other day. Here's the fact of the matter is coaches can't touch kids. You just can't do it. Nowadays. Back when Woody Hayes and Bobby Knight were exploding and stuff like that. Well, those days are different, right? Because for one, there's cameras and video everywhere, so you can't do anything. But the fact that you, as a coach, when you're recruiting a kid and you're sitting in that mother and father, grandmother, aunt, uncle, living room, you got to be able to let them know that their kids will be safe with you, right? So touching them or reprimanding them like that, who wants to go to a coach like that? What when you're recruiting a kid, right?
Oh, I
So
don't
that
disagree at all. I just think there's a broader context, as you pointed out, to
yeah,
why Coach Lake reacted the way he did. But,
yeah.
um, hey, if do you see any scenario where Lake will be the Husky coach for the 2022 season, Renault?
Ooh, you man, wow. Um, yeah, I mean I could see it, but I don't know if they want to actually do it because you've got alumni and you got boosters, right? And of course you got all of us, and they're getting a lot of static. And whether or not they want to be able to deal with that static, if they decide to keep him there, that's going to be that's going to be the thing. Um, I I I have to say he's probably done. Unfortunately for him, he probably
Yes,
deserves better, but he's probably done.
I tend to just going on predictions. You're probably right. I like to see Lake get more of a chance, but as you mentioned, it's just a whole different era with how much space coaches are given with growing pains. So if Lake is gone, who would you like to see as the new Husky coach? It will not apparently be Jim Mora. He just got hired by UConn. Do you see that news
Yeah,
drop today?
I
Yeah.
did see
So
that.
so
So
who would you like to see? Justin Wilcox's name is coming up. Who would you like to see as the Husky coach if Lake is
yeah,
not?
but Justin Wilcox has a losing record, at Cal. So I don't know what the big deal with him. Um, to be honest, I don't really have a coach in mind other than maybe well, of course, everybody's saying that Orgeron would be available because he's going to be leaving LSU. I would like to have him come up here for more of a basically a consulting type deal, um, to maybe help get the program because he knows recruiting, right? So you could get a guy like him to be like a consultant, and then perhaps you could get a coach like the coach out of Cincinnati, because he's in Cincinnati, right? They're not in a power conference, so I wouldn't mind looking at him. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. A guy like that, um, to be coerced to come to a pack five, a power conference uh, school. So man, and there's let's see who else. For the guy in Cincinnati and Orgeron are the two. I guess Clay Helton would be kind of a out there type thing. So
Orgeron would be a fascinating guy from a regional standpoint, a Louisiana
yeah,
guy coming to coach University of Washington, Seattle. It's just, culturally, demographically, such a different situation than LSU
right.
in a lot of ways. But
And also Wake Forest's coach. They were before they lost last week, they were 8-0. And he's in the ACC, but the ACC for football is not the same as ACC in basketball, right? So they don't have the same type of um, whatever, the same type of reputation. So I would be okay with getting somebody like him from that school. You know,
well, we're going to move on to another very touchy subject. What are your thoughts on Mike Hopkins? The UW basketball coach is under a lot of scrutiny right now. Just had a tough loss against Northern Illinois.
I watched that game.
Yeah. I didn't see any of it, but I want to share with you what one of my recent guests, Eldridge Rakasner, former NBA player, I said. I asked Eldridge, all
Mm-hmm.
right, Washington's predicted by a lot of Pac-12 basketball pundits to probably be the 10th or 11th best team, the 12
Right.
teams in the Pac-12. I asked Eldridge if Washington were to slightly overperform and be maybe the 7th or 8th best team in the Pac-12, would that save Hopkins' job? Eldridge thinks that probably would. What do you think if they were to modestly overperform? Would that be enough for Hopkins to save his job?
Well, let me say this: Eldridge Krasner is a UW guy, right? And he is an ex NBA player, so his know-how and knowledge is far exceeds mine,
Well, mine as
right?
well. So
So I'm not going to disagree to that extent on Eldridge's claim that if he does become like sixth, seventh, eighth, that he'd keep his job. So I won't disagree with that. Yeah, that sounds plausible. Um, but the problem with Washington right now is they have no shooters, right? Consistently, okay, and they play a zone that has holes constantly. They give up layup, they give up open threes. They have the guys that can play man to man. I don't understand why Hopkins refuses to change his defense, even if it's to change during a situation, right? Like you're you, Northern Illinois was killing them on threes. Man, go to man. Stop that. But he doesn't, and so it's frustrating because we're saying the same thing with different players. We're seeing the poor defense, we're seeing the non-shooting, but you got all these new guys that have come in and nothing's changed. So if that's the case, then yeah, coaching's the problem.
you really, one reason I enjoy listening to you, Renaud, is you break down the inside of sports. You're breaking down the zone. A lot of very casual fans are not going to break down the man-to-man rotation versus zone rotation. It's fun to hear you break it
Well,
down.
I do
You're like a
consider myself.
surgeon. You're breaking it down deeply. So
Well, I appreciate that. But listen, I'm no expert by any stretch. I'm a casual friend, like most of your listeners, our listeners. So I don't want people to think that, oh, this guy thinks he knows it. No, I don't. I don't know it all. All I know is what I've seen, right, throughout my 50 some odd years of watching basketball and football and baseball and sports that I love. And so I have a lot of years of watching. So that's how I can break down some stuff. But
no, don't sell
by
yourself short. You bring up some good points. All right, I'm going to ask you another question about UW, and we're going to probably move on to some other stuff in a couple
okay.
minutes. Is Jen Cohen the right athletic director long term for University of Washington?
Well, maybe not for the big sports that we have, football, basketball. But people are saying, well, our rowing team, volleyball team, softball team, all these other minor sports are doing excellent. So you have to think, okay, those are doing great, but the money making opportunities for sports are the ones that we're failing at. I mean, because what makes the money for UW? Basketball and football, right? But those other sports, yeah, they do well in, and it's commendable, and I love that. I love that we have probably the best rowing team ever, throughout the nation. But they're not bringing in the money, right? UW Huskies football team, when you go to a bowl game, you you bring in money. When you play in the NCAA tournament, you're bringing in money. So I don't think she's the one.
Well,
I don't have a person to fill in because I'm not that savvy or I'm not into who is a good AD right now. But clearly, right as this of this moment, I don't think she's the right one for this particular university.
it's interesting how timing is such a big deal with so many things in life. I had Jen Cohen on my show in about early 2018. At the time, she was seen as one of the best ADs in the country. In 2016, Washington got the Final Four. In football, Hopkins was starting off splendidly as the new coach in basketball. And so, is she in a way just maybe it's bad timing? Is that part of it with Cohen? Because clearly the Washington basketball team and the football team have done well since she's been the athletic director. Are those unfair
Yes,
points?
yes. People forget that Hopkins won Coach of the Year his first 2 years here.
Right, right.
So we can't forget that. But of course, what is the main thing they say when about that though? Well, he won with Romar's guy.
Right, right, right.
So and then of course, uh, the thing that killed Washington football the last couple of years is Chris Peterson leaving. If Chris Peterson was still here, would we be in this situation and predicament? I'd say no. I'd say we'd be better off in recruiting, right? The team would be doing much better. Um, We probably wouldn't have Dylan Morris starting at quarterback because he's definitely a problem, whether people agree or not. And so things would be a little bit different. And then, of course, having said that, then Jen Cohen's situation would be a lot smoother. But when Chris Peterson left, that just took everything, that's a domino effect because then now even Washington basketball now has been 5-21 last year,
Not
right?
acceptable. Yeah.
No. And then this year now, they win their exhibition game by 30, but then, a middle of the road Husky team from Northern Illinois comes in and puts it to them. You know, the leash is short for him, for sure. And that seat is going to be hotter and hotter. So, for all of them, Lake, Hopkins, and Jen Cohen.
Lot there, lot there.
Yeah.
Paul Schneiderman again on the Sports Untold podcast, 104th edition with Renault Bean. All right, I'm going to do a little shift here. We could talk Husky sports for this whole episode, but I want to move around a bit. And I'm going to ask you two questions that I've been asking almost all my guests since about late 2019. And the first question is, Renault, who's a deceased sports figure in history you would have loved to have interviewed or had a conversation with? And who is a living sports figure you would love to interview or have a conversation with? I can give you some names if you want.
Well,
Other guests have given me.
Well, of course, a deceased one would be Muhammad Ali because he would be such an interesting person just to talk to. And I found out recently that I'm related to him distantly, of course. And so that made, yeah. And so, that really would pique my interest.
You got some strong genes there. Wow.
Unfortunately, not the same type because I'm not a boxer. I don't have
cool.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, so definitely Muhammad Ali. And as far as a living one, you're probably going to be surprised, but it would be George Iceman Gervin because that was my guy growing up. And I loved him.
George Gervin.
Yeah, I loved seeing him, on TV. I know he's coaching Big Three and all that, but man, I want to talk to him and just talk about his days of growing up in Detroit and, and being in the ABA. Oh man, I would love that.
There's a Gervin's restaurant at the San Antonio airport. So at the San Antonio, it has all these pictures of George Gervin, and so I, in a couple of years ago, I was in San Antonio. I had a little meal at I think it's called Gervin's at the San Antonio airport. So that's a great name. And what's fun about George Gervin? I believe he's a Hall of Famer, absolutely a top player. But I like that answer that he's not the biggest basketball household name. So it's fun that you gave a name of someone who was a very accomplished, great player, but may not be the biggest name. And so that's the reason why I like that answer. So fun. Well, let's have a little Mariners talk. They were in the playoff chase till about the 8th inning of their 162nd game. I think it was on Sunday, October 3rd. Were you pretty pumped up during that Mariners run in late September or October?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we needed that, right? Because, the Mariners, as everyone knows, if you follow baseball, haven't been in the playoffs in 20 years. As a matter of fact, that franchise has probably the longest drought, if I'm not mistaken, or top two. So, this September was quite exciting. I mean, I haven't seen people this pumped up for the Mariners since 2001, when they won 116 games. So yes, and now this off season is definitely the biggest off season probably in their history. Because, now the expectation, they won 90 games, right? And they still got some work to do. They had to say goodbye to Kyle Seager, which is no surprise, but he was a big integral part of this past season. But they need a stud pitcher, right? They need a guy that can come in every 5 days and shut you down. Because a stud pitcher, what they do is they stop losing streaks if you're on one, because if they're pitching every 5 days, if you get a 3 or 4 game losing streak, that's it, for most of the season, as long as he's healthy. So they need a stud pitcher. And then, of course, I think Chris Flexen really showed something this season. So if he can be the same, they could be something to be reckoned with. And of course, they've got some position areas they need to work on. And of course, Kyle Lewis if he comes back. So yeah, but I'm excited because the free agency is coming up, and it's excited about maybe Marcus Simeon or Carlos Correa, somebody like that. So yeah, let's
Chris
go.
Bryant,
And
Nelson Cruz, a lot of names are coming
yeah,
up.
and
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when we found out that Ken Griffey Jr. has bought a stake in the Mariners, I got really excited because Ken Griffey is not a guy that's going to be in the background, okay, like the Mariners owners have been. He is going to be front and center, and he's going to want whoever he wants to be on that team. He's going to try and go after him, and that's what should excite everyone that Ken Griffey's back in the fold and really want to be an integral part of this team again.
Do you know what his percentage cut is, Renault? Is it 1 or 2%, or do you have any idea what his actual share is?
I haven't. You know what? I haven't even read that.
Either have I.
I was so excited to hear it. I was like, oh man, I don't need to read anything else.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the idea of the Mariners going after like a big dog picture. Should they go for like a guy like Max Scherzer? Would you like to see him just go all out for one of these veteran starters? What do you think?
I love Scherzer, but the problem is, can he stay healthy? And plus he's what, 30?
7 or so, I think.
Yeah, he's up there. So, man, but it depends. If you get a good deal for him, you gotta get him because he's that guy. But but they gotta get it. But they gotta get a guy. They gotta get a stud. I don't know who else is out there right off the top of my head. But somebody like Scherzer, yeah, if he's available for the right price, yeah, you got to get him.
It's a real jigsaw puzzle for Jerry DiPoto and what to do. It's very tricky. The M's payroll from 2016 to 2019 was in the 140, 160 million range per year.
Yeah.
It was down to 73 million last year. So they got some spending money, don't they?
They do, and they got now with the progress that they've made, they can actually go out and get like a Marcus Simeon, right? Because now they know that they're there. They're right there. The Astros are still the standard in the AL West, but the Mariners, even though the Astros blew them out a few times, what changed for me as far as my thinking of the Mariners was of course, other than Ken Griffey, but before that, during the season, the Astros had the Mariners blown out like 11-7 or something like that. And the Mariners came back and won that game. And it was down in Houston, where they always had problems. That made me realize that, hey, this team is changing. They're on the way up. And then so I'm looking at maybe the AL West starting to be owned by the Mariners in the next year or two.
It's just so frustrating with the Mariners. They've had these respectable years the last 20 years. They've won like 87 games and 93 games in 02. They win 90 games this year, and they don't make the playoffs. The Braves win 88 and win the whole thing. It's just, It's sort of like, I call the Mariners like the Charlie Brown of pro teams. Nothing always seems to go right for Charlie Brown, So I'm hoping they can step it up, in the 2020s. Yeah, well, hey, Renault, I want to get your take on this, and I don't think Major League Baseball, Major League Baseball has some labor issues going on right now too, so there could be a lockout to start the season next year. But Major League Baseball has still not decided if they're going to have the universal DH or the DH to be out of the National League. Where do you stand on that?
Well, yeah, I like the DH. Well, I'm an American League guy, okay? I'm going to be honest. I like the American League. Mariners are in the American League. My favorite team, the Yankees, are in the American League. So I'm an AL guy. So, yeah, I love the DH. I would like to see the DH in the National League. Now, I get that the baseball purists, like the decisions that the managers have to make when you take out a pitcher, then you got to have a pinch hitter and all that, and then you got to have position changes. You got a new center fielder coming in. I get all that. That's fine. But to be honest, most people want to see offense, right? I mean, let's be honest. They want to see home runs, doubles. They want to see that. So, and with the DH, you'll get more of that. So that, I'm all for it. But I'm also okay if National League says, no, we're not doing that. We're still going to be without the DH. I'm okay because we've lived with it this long. It ain't going to hurt anything else any further. So
It's fun for the fans to see some of these guys like in their late 30s and 40s continue to play. In that
that's
sense,
true.
it's fan friendly. But I have to admit though that there is some fascinating strategy that can come when the pitcher hits though too. Whether to
Yeah.
take the pitcher out in the seventh, eighth inning, all that stuff. So it's one of those subjects I'm actually have kind of an agnostic view on, to tell you the truth. But I guess I would slightly lean towards having the DH, but I don't know. And I have my American League roots too, being a Mariners fan.
Yeah.
But all right, Renault. What would be your favorite sports movie? And I tell you how I got this question. I have a book that came out in 2006. I've asked a few other guests the same question. And this guy picks his top favorite movies. Granville really challenged this, by the way. This guy picked his top favorite movies as The Hustler of Paul Newman, Bull Durham, This Sporting Life with Richard Harris, came out in 1963 about rugby. Number 4 was Chariots of Fire. Number 5 is Raging Bull. Granville and some of my other guests did not like that list. What would be your favorite sports movie?
Well, I don't really like them too much, to be honest. But one that I used to watch all the time when I was a teenager, and that was One on One with Robbie Benson.
Mm-hmm. That was good.
I used to watch that so much because it got into the details of what college sports is like for a guy that gets a scholarship, but things don't work out as planned.
That's a good one.
I found that fascinating because you don't see movies like that, right? You just didn't get that. You always get these feel good, you know, superstar, whatever, right off, and everything works out fine. No, not for this guy. He came from a small town, playing basketball, was state champ, was better than everybody. Got to L.A. and it was too big for him, And then he lost his focus, and then but if you've never seen that movie, I suggest if you're a fan of basketball, especially, to watch that movie. It's made in '77, so it's a little cheesy looking. But trust me, it's a great movie, and I love it.
That is a great sports movie to throw out. I don't think I've seen that since like the late 70s or 80s, so I may have to rewatch that one. But I mentioned to a couple other guests, I liked The Natural, I liked Hoop Dreams, I liked Any Given Sunday with Al Pacino. Those are a couple of my favorites. Rocky movies I liked, but anyhow.
Hoop Dreams is amazing.
That's a great documentary. Great documentary. Granville was funny. He said The Hustler of Paul Newman is a pool movie, even legitimately a sports movie. I would argue it is, but Granville thought that a pool movie is pushing it as even being a sports movie. That was that was Granville's take. All right, having so much fun. Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports Untold, 104th edition with Renault Bean, just having a great discussion of a range of sports topics. All right, I'm going to read you what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said about Aaron Rodgers. I want to get your take on this, Renault.
Oh, okay.
Jabbar said Aaron Rodgers' ignorance regarding the science of immunology brings back the old stereotype of the big dumb jock. His utter lack of even the most basic knowledge and logic is shocking. What's your take on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's take on Aaron Rodgers' COVID behavior?
Yeah, I actually read that a few days ago, and I can't disagree. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, he's just making a mockery of this whole thing, his attitude and what he says, and it's just very disheartening because people look at these guys, unfortunately, as heroes, I guess, for lack of a better word, but you got to realize these guys are people. And just because you're talented at a certain thing doesn't make you either a good person or a bad person.
Very true.
It just makes you human. And you can't get lost in the fact that some of these guys don't have all the answers, don't have all the facts, and just go by who they think that they agree with. Like he said, he was getting his information off of Joe Rogan from a podcast. Okay, that sounds silly.
By the way, Lucius brings up Joe Rogan to me a lot, so I'm kind of chuckling. So,
Yeah. So, he said that. I'm like, well, dude, what are you doing? Right. And then, of course, so he says that. Then the person that's following him, what are they saying? You know, it's crazy to me.
Hey, we talked earlier about whether Jimmy Lake's suspension was a little overkill. I think we both have similar views on that. What do you think of Rodgers getting, with his $1 million plus contract, getting a $14,000, $600 fine for his stoking of misinformation about COVID
Oh, it's
19
a joke.
vaccines? What do you think of that fine? Just 14
It's a
grand and
joke.
change.
A joke for one thing.
Yeah.
Alan Lazard got the same thing, right?
Who's that?
Now,
Who's that, Renault?
Alan Lazard is one of his wide receivers
Okay. Okay.
for the Green Bay Packers.
Right.
He got the same fine. Okay. Now their contracts are vastly different. So you're hitting up Alan Lazard for 14,000, right? Which could hurt your pocket a little bit. But for Aaron Rodgers, that 14 ain't hurting nothing.
Right.
And then you got CD Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys was fined $20,000 for having his shirt untucked. Now what? That doesn't even make any sense. How this guy is violated COVID protocols, which could be what? Life threatening. Because people, you have to realize, just because you're strong and healthy and you get COVID and you survive, that doesn't mean that the person you give it to will have the same outcome. There are people out there that have weak immune systems, and if you give them COVID, they will die. Right? So you can't be nonchalant about not wearing a mask in the facility like you're supposed to, not wearing a mask in pressers like you're supposed to or you should, right? And you should not make a mockery on whether or not you are vaccinated by changing the word to, yeah, I'm immunized. And then complain to the media that they didn't ask a follow-up question about whether he's actually vaccinated.
He wasn't being forthcoming. Yeah, that's evident.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, yeah. One thing, Renault, in this whole pandemic era that I'm noticing, and now we're entering the vaccine part of this era, which began like late 2020, early 2021. It seems like there's a lot of institutions and organizations that they're just very lukewarm about enforcement. Do you think that Rodgers getting a pretty minimal fine is an indicator all the National Football League may be very ambivalent about COVID policies in the first place? Just food for thought.
Yeah, more than likely. But Paul, I got a question.
Yeah.
If Lamar Jackson had the same situation with him,
right,
and it's not Aaron Rodgers, would he have the same penalty? Do you think? Honestly.
Well, yeah. I mean, being a person of color, there's obviously some discrimination that can occur. That's an interesting hypothetical, and
yeah.
You just have to wonder if what the reaction would have been. So
yeah.
I don't think that's an unfair question. So I got one more COVID subject for you, and I can't help it. We have to talk on a sports policy based show. I have to talk some COVID stuff
Absolutely.
in this era. UC Berkeley has one of the strictest COVID policies of any university regarding college sports in the country, and I believe their game against Southern Cal is either being canceled or rescheduled in December because I guess there was like about 44 cases of COVID hit Cal's football program over the last 10 days or so. Okay, I'm going to read you something. There's this physician, a Dr. Monica Gandhi. She's an infectious disease expert at UCSF. And I like to give different perspectives on this show. And here's what she says. She says, I have zero panic whatsoever as a public health person, as an infectious disease doctor of 44 healthy people who are fully vaccinated who may have a little virus in their nose on a highly sensitive test. She also says she doesn't think it's an outbreak. She thinks it's a sign the vaccines are working. She says that with asymptomatic testing, it's not a surprise that some people would have a positive test. What do you think of what Dr. Gandhi has to say? And is the UC Berkeley COVID policy going too far?
Well, we know what happened last year in California, right? With the COVID and the players, they couldn't even play in their own state, especially in basketball. They couldn't even play in their own arena. They had to play every game on the road. Right. So I am not going to question doctors' assessment because I am not a doctor. I'm just a observer from what I've seen. And if she said, and I spoke about healthy athletes, with strong immune system. So, man, but I also wouldn't make light of it either, right? I mean, you're talking 44 players. That's a significant number to me. If it was 14, maybe I'm like, okay, not so bad. But we're talking, what? How many players are on a college football team? 80 or 90 or something like that. So that's what, 45
Plus
about
staff, too.
yeah, plus staff. So that's a high percentage. So that's a problem. And yes, they did move the game to December 4th, as a matter of fact. So, but of course, pending COVID test on that, that might get canceled too. So,
One
man,
thing,
yeah.
and I'm not a doctor either, obviously, but
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed in these COVID discussions, it seems like most infectious disease experts are pretty conservative in how they evaluate COVID outbreaks. It just kind of interests me. This particular doctor took it that Berkeley was going too far, and that these asymptomatic young people having a little bit of the virus in their nose wasn't that big of a deal. To me, it was kind of a contrary position.
Yeah, yeah. I had a doctor's appointment last month, and my doctor and I spoke about COVID at length. And I was pretty shocked at how he, when when you're talking about when you see Dr. Fauci on there giving his doom speeches or his this, and then I spoke to my own doctor, and he was nowhere near any of that. He was more like the doctor that you described, as far as being, oh, you'll be fine. You just, you're vaccinated, because he said, yeah, you're vaccinated in this and that and the other. I wouldn't worry so much. But I was like, okay, but what about people that don't have strong immune system, right? If those 40 people get around other people that aren't, as healthy or strong, then we could actually have a serious breakout. So to me, I would think they would show a little bit more concern than they do. But
I hear what you're saying, and I just wanted to give a kind of a contrary perspective here on the UC Berkeley decision. Now, kind of interesting, not to focus on myself too much, but early October, my primary care doctor said, oh, Paul, hold off on the booster. But when I called him back early November to get his opinion again, he said, yeah, go get a booster. So it seems like things that are just evolving so much.
Right.
Yeah. How to handle this stuff. You got time for a few more questions?
Absolutely.
Great. We're having a good time, Renault. I got to tell you, I am not a hockey expert. I don't know much about power plays or about hockey zones, and I barely understand the icing rule. But I'll tell you, I'm really enjoying the Kraken. I've gone to a couple of games. I'm watching them. I'm getting really into this. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So anyhow, the Nate Silver 538 predictions website. Do you ever take a look at that site?
I haven't.
Yeah, it's fun. He started off as a political site, but now he has a lot of sport. His site has a lot of sports predictions and other things. So he has the Kraken right now, or they have the Kraken having a 19% chance of making the playoffs. And they rank the Kraken about 24 of the 32 teams. So I think we start off not bad. I think we start off in the middle. So the team, the team's like 4-7-1 right now, something like that. So here's my question for Renault: if the Kraken were to sneak in the playoffs their first season, how big a Seattle sports story would it be? Would it be as big or even bigger in the Hawks making the playoffs, or maybe even bigger in the Mariners finally getting back? How do you quantify it if the Kraken were to get in the Seattle sports landscape?
It wouldn't be as big as the Hawks. It would be kind of somewhere, probably somewhere in the middle, because, look, Vegas went to the Stanley Cup their first year, and nobody's expecting the Kraken to do that. Just to be in the playoffs would be amazing.
Get in the dance at least, right?
Yeah. So yeah, there would be some buzz, but I don't think it would be anything near when the Hawks make the playoffs, or even if the Mariners get up there, to finally break through and make the playoffs. That would be ridiculous.
It'd be kind of cool if they could sneak in. Even if the Kraken got in their second year, that'd be pretty cool. I mean, fun to see them get in this year. But are you enjoying? Are you getting more into hockey? Are you enjoying it and stuff? You enjoying the Kraken?
Well, see, I used to live on the East Coast, right?
Right.
And so I lived in New Jersey for almost 20 years, and so I kind of have an affinity to the New Jersey Devils, and I've been to a few of those games, and they were. Listen, folks have not been to a hockey game and just watch it on TV. it does not compare. You can, I'm telling you, you have to go to a game live in order to fully get the full extent and enjoyment of what NHL hockey. And if you do that, then when you watch on TV, it'll even enhance that because now you'll know what's going on. Maybe you'll understand better if you actually go to a game.
I could not agree more. It's a heck of an in-person sport to watch. Watching those guys slam against the wall, and it's just watch them skate around. I really enjoyed watching it in person. It's a great sport. Couldn't agree more. I think I want to get the NBA back, but having hockey here is I would say it's beyond a consolation prize. It's a great American winter sport to have here at the NHL.
Absolutely.
So, well, this may be my final question, Renault, for you, and I hope to have you back one day. Maybe I can have you co-host with me at some point. So it's fun to get you on. So now with the Climate Pledge Arena open now and going, and there's been some concerts there, and people are really enjoying it. The parking has its challenges in Queen Anne, but people are enjoying it. Do you think the Soda Arena plan is dead, or is it on life support right now?
I'd say life support. I wish, but I talk about this with my friend Michael Carter all the time. We don't feel that the Climate Pledge was the best choice. Listen. I understand that the arena is probably fabulous, and I'm actually going to be there at the end of the month because Trevor Noah's coming to town, and we've got tickets for that.
Great.
So I'm looking forward to actually seeing the arena and seeing the show and all that. But, I thought that Soto Arena plan was probably the best because, look, there's transportation all over the place in Soto. You got bus, you got train, right? Everything right there. And with the Climate Pledge, you still have to go downtown, Westlake, still have to ride the little monorail. Now, I understand that they've got a pretty good herding system as far as getting on to, in and out of the monorail, but I don't see how they can just get all those people. And then, of course, the parking, as you already mentioned, in Queen Anne has always been a challenge. So I just don't understand what I do understand is because it's city owned, but yeah, duh. But, I just, I don't see how the Soto Arena would have had any problems with the port traffic because you got I-5 and all these different throughways through there, and like I said, bus and light rail and all that, and that would have been a much better venue option to me. But I think it is on life support, Paul.
Well, I was pro Soto Arena too. I thought it was the better of the two options that were being discussed for several years. But I will say this: I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. I think overall it's still a good major indoor arena that was constructed. So that's kind of where I'm at on it now.
Hey, look, if that's where the Sonics can come back to, I'm all for it. Because I want them back, and I'm hopeful that I haven't heard anything about whether Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, has actually been up here to take a tour. I would think that Seattle would invite him to do that, right? Take a tour of the arena, take a look at it, see what you show them the renderings of how basketball would look there. And look, Seattle was successful for 41 years. Why wouldn't you come back here? I mean, they've been to Charlotte twice. What the heck? New Orleans? Why not Seattle?
A lot of talk is percolating the NBA is going to come back at some point this decade. And I talk to people that seem to have a lot of optimism, that have a little more inside knowledge than I have. But we'll just have to see. One thing, Renault, I want to mention to you, and this could be a real game changer in how people evaluate the Soto Arena plan versus the remodel arena now at the Seattle Center, is apparently by 2035, light rail is going to get to the Seattle Center. And some are wondering if with this new infrastructure plan that Biden got through with $8 billion plus coming to Washington State, maybe it could be expedited. So maybe light rail will get to Seattle Center a little earlier. Just food for thought. So
that would help for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Right. We'll see. Well, Renault, just great to have a chat on all sorts of sports topics. What a great hour we've had, and thanks for coming on Sports Untold. And you and I will definitely be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise. You take care. I'll see you soon.
Okay.